What's up, good plant people? This is Mario, and I want to introduce you to the Plant Nerd Podcast and our very first guest, Becky Griffin with University of Georgia. She's going to talk about the Southeastern Pollinator Census and why it's so important. Yes, you're going to go to your backyard and count all these pollinators, but we're going to pull all this data and really learn about the health and state of pollinators throughout the Southeast and beyond. So let's dig in, let's learn about 7 plants that you can bring to your yard to help pollinators and so much more. Let's go dig in.
All right, thanks Mario for having me. Yes, I work for University of Georgia, Go Dogs. I am the Community and School Garden Coordinator. I'm also I have a bee certification, so I am actually the apiarist at the Georgia Mountain Research and Education Center. I am a Pollinator Health Associate, so I wear many hats, but most people know me mostly for coordinating the Great Southeast Pollinator Census. So that is coming up in August, so we are all hands on deck, busy 24/7 getting ready for this year's census.
That's amazing. So you've been doing this for how many years? I mean, I don't want to date you. I'm not trying to age you. I just need to know in context, like how long you've actually been doing this.
Okay, so the first statewide census was in 2019, but prior to that, in 2017 and 2018, we did 2 years of a pilot project. So we would kind of work out some of the kinks, figure out how to make it better, and do a lot of PR work to get everybody jazzed and excited so that we could hit the ground running in 2019.
Now, you've had some great response. I know that the participation has really grown year over year. Do you carry some of the statistics with you? And just generally, and I'm not looking for the actual number, but maybe just percentage of growth of how the program has grown in the short number of years.
Sure. In 2019, we had over 4,000 participants, and then 2020, COVID happened. So instead of encouraging people to go out to events and count with groups or at your school, we helped people figure out how to count with their families. That year, we actually had recommendations for movies they could watch. We have a Spotify playlist for pollinators, and we had some of our family and consumer science agents post recipes that featured pollinator plants. So our participation was a little bit down. 2021, we are growing again, and we doubled from 2019 to 2022. We over doubled participation. So it's fun.
So these groups, they're going out there participating. Any report come back from any of these groups that, finding the endangered or, rediscovering an extinct species, or what are some of the findings that are a bit of anomalies that wouldn't have really come to light had it not been for the census?
Okay. So you're talking about finding cool insects. Well, I'm going to shift a little bit and talk about finding cool people, because to me, that's the best part of the census. So what happens is every year at the end of the census, when I am exhausted, haven't slept, the day is over, I get a call from someone that says, I've had no idea. I have gardened my whole life. I have no idea of the number of insects and the diversity that are in my garden, because I had to sit down for 15 minutes and count. And to me, that is it. I have scored the touchdown. I'm high-fiving my team, because to me, that's what it's all about. I started the census because I was visiting wonderful gardens where gardeners knew a lot about plant selection and soil health, didn't know a lot about insects. That piece was really missing, and they were having problems, maybe garden yield problems with their vegetables or pest problems with other insects. So to me, the most important part is the educational component. And at the end of the census every year, it is a hoot to see the people that count. So the monks from the Monastery of the Holy Spirit love this project. They count for me every year. The Daughters of the American Revolution have termed it their conservation project.
My mother is one of them.
Remember that her garden's looking good by the pictures. She's going to be ready for good counting. We have VFW groups. We have Boy Scout troops and Girl Scout troops. We have Project Chimps, which is a chimp sanctuary, nothing at all to do with plants and pollinators. They host a count every year. So it is fun for me to see the scope of this project And when we get somebody who comes to me and says, I had no idea, they're on fire. Now they're a pollinator advocate and they're talking to their neighbors. You know, we need to plant plants that attract pollinators. You need to understand how much fun it is. And we're going to make this whole neighborhood one big pollinator corridor. And so it kind of goes off and running. So that to me is the greatest discovery. Now, if we want to talk about insects, when you count for the census, we don't ask for species identification. You don't have to be an entomologist. But some side things that happen, people were interested in a particular butterfly coming out of Florida, a long-winged butterfly that has a very unique life cycle. And they thought it had ventured north, but weren't sure how far. And we were able to document it as far north as Marietta, just from my group, my census group people. So every day is a fun adventure with this group of pollinator advocates encounters. Right now on social media, they're sharing pictures, asking questions. We're learning this week. I think last week maybe was Fly Week. This week is, I think, Honeybee Week. Next week is Butterfly Week. So it's all about learning and getting everybody excited about pollinators.
Well, that's awesome. Well, so let's talk about some of the plants that are attracting some of those pollinators.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to hear from you, like, what are some of the plants that you're excited about? I would love to get to 7 plants. I know that's a long list, but if you could give us a few plants that you're really seeing is attracting what, and then I'd like to talk about what food it's actually producing for some of these pollinators and how some of these plants are stimulating the local food economy or local food system for really everything within these areas.
Okay. Well, the interesting thing, a little side part, is the census takes place in August. And August traditionally has been kind of a dearth for Georgia. We are still really hot. We're usually in a drought. So by having the census in August, at first it was problematic because I would get hate mail from Tifton. It's too hot to be out counting pollinators. What's happening? But over the years, we've encouraged people to plant some of these drought tolerant plants that will be blooming in August. So we sort of anecdotally or ancillarily helped a little bit of the dearth there. So my number one plant for August would be mountain mint.
Okay.
Mountain mint is a native. It is, I mean, the deer don't eat it. It produces and spreads really easily by runners. It attracts a lot of wasps. It attracts a lot of bees. I don't see as many butterflies on it, but it creates this whole little ecosystem. So I will find little ambush bugs, which are tiny little versions, sort of like praying mantises that are kind of hanging out there waiting to see what they can capture for dinner. It doesn't attract a lot of pest insects. We don't find aphids on it or things like that. So that's probably my number one.
All right. What else are you looking for this August?
Goldenrod.
Goldenrod, solidago. Yep.
Yep. I'm looking for our native asters. I get a lot on those.
Yeah. Any local aster or so. Okay. Yeah. Keep going. I don't want to stop you. You're on a roll.
Sedum. There's several sedums that are blooming in August that I get a lot of good counts on.
Thoughts on sedum autumn joy? Are you familiar with that one?
I have that in my garden. Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, it has an unusual leaf shape, right? It adds a dimension to the garden as far as texture goes, and so it's just lovely. Coneflowers are still blooming, and they're always a treat. Bee balm. If it hadn't petered out by August, if it's been taken care of. Annually, I love Typhonia.
Are you trying to say I'm not taking care of my bee balm because it's on its way out? That's what I'm feeling.
Well, I didn't want to go there, Mario, but you know.
Okay. Can we double click? I mean, let's double click. How do you take care of your bee balm? This podcast is not for everyone. This is all about me. Okay. This is
because your mother's going to be calling you to come and take care of her garden.
She's going to be calling me no matter what. At least I have an answer for something.
That's right. So yeah, just making sure that when we have those droughts, I don't like to do a lot of watering, but if we have a week where no rain is falling, That tall bee balm really likes to have some moisture there. So just keeping things watered in the middle of the drought so they make it through.
Are you mulching? Are you mulching right now? And what type of mulch for your bee balm? Like what, don't worry about a product. I mean, is it fresh grade? Is it old grade? What kind of mulch are you working with?
Well, I live up in the mountains, so I'm using old leaves and pine straw that I move from one area in my garden to the other. So that's what I use. That's what I mulch everything with.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so are you checking pH ever so often? Or maybe maybe you're checking pH if it has a problem. I know too much leaf mold can go one way, too much pine straw can go another. It sounds like you got a 50-50 blend-ish. But what are you looking for if you got to check pH?
I'm looking for a 6.87-ish is what I'm looking for. Up here, it's hard to get that. So instead of messing a whole lot with the pH, I try and choose some plants that can handle that. That pH and go from there.
So we got to 5. I cut you off. No, 6 on bee balm. Do you have a 7th that we should be on the hunt?
I'm going to throw an annual in there, and that's Typhonia, a Mexican sunflower.
Mexican sunflower.
Yes, it blooms. It's beautiful orange color. The butterflies love it, and it will bloom through September and October when we have monarch migration. So I always attract monarchs to my yard with Typhonia.
It's so interesting to see how obviously, we have a plant and obviously they're going to have a lot of pollinators and a lot of insects and birds and bees and they're going to be attracted to it. But it feels like you're painting or designing the wildlife that you want to see through plants, which I think is so fascinating. So it's, you want this monarch butterfly, you're going to plant this Mexican sunflower. What are the best resources for homeowners or, landscape architects, designers to really have that? Do you have a go-to source that you feel is something as a resource for professionals and practitioners?
Well, I like, as an insect person, I like to go to see what Xerxes is up to, what kind of things that they've done. And what I tell people is we have so many beautiful public gardens, right? And you can just go to the Atlanta garden. You can go to the one in Athens, stroll around and look what's going on. What are you seeing on these plants? Do they look like they're being taken care of? Is it a lot of work for this particular plant? What are you seeing that's visiting that plant? And then make notes and then decide if that is something that will grow where you are. And chances are it will. If it's growing, down at the public garden in Atlanta and you live in Decatur, chances are whatever you see there will grow in your yard. It's kind of an easy way to do that. I get frustrated when people watch television shows coming out of Connecticut and they want to plant traditional lilacs or, things that just do not do well here, when there's so many beautiful plants, as that do very well here, just making a good plant selection. So you're not out there worried about fungicides. You're not out there worrying about tons of water, even when it's raining, just making a good choice.
You struck a chord with me because I've told people at the Atlanta Botanical Garden, that they need to have a gift shop that actually sells plants.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Your experience is to highlight all these wonderful interactions with insects but how the plants make us feel. Yet when I go to the gift shop, all you can buy is a book on it.
Yeah.
I get access to the experience, but I don't get to bring Atlanta Botanical Garden to my backyard.
Right.
So, that's where, not a commercial for Servscape, but that's where Servscape can actually play a role, is connecting the undermarketed horticultural grower that grows that plant commercially with the customer that wants to bring that interaction home.
And I think you guys do a great job with that, because you will do packages and bundles that concentrate on that emotional experience. If you want to see pollinators, you all do a great blend of pollinator plants and makes it a no-brainer, which is not easy to find. But yes, we said earlier before we started the podcast, plants have emotional responses. People have emotional responses to plants. I know I do. I'll go outside and I'll see a bee or a lizard, or we're restoring a little prairie on our property, and we have baby foxes. I saw a kit last night. Can it get much better than that? No. And it's all about how you design, where you're living.
Okay, nice segue. We're going to talk about the weather and the climate, right?
Mhm.
So we have, in the sense that, we have things that we're doing now. We're one of the hottest years on record, and we have immediate need. But then also we're looking at the climate of the situation as well, and knowing that we have to have some sea change, literally and figuratively, right? We can't get away from these puns because they are part of our life. They're in the fabric. We're in the life of what's happening. So tell me, obviously we have the pollinator census. Let's call that the weather. But like, what is the climate? Like, where do you see us moving? Like, how do you see us really addressing some of these issues? Yes, locally. Yes, we're going to build community. But what are some of the things broadly that you would like to see in the world that's moving the needle to a more sustainable and resilient community for everyone?
Well, I think education is the key. I go back to the person who's never notices what bees look like. Jimmy Fallon, I think, did a man on the street thing a couple years ago. I don't know if you saw it, where he asked people to name all the pollinators they knew, and all these people knew were honeybees. We have 4,000 native bees in North America. Honeybee is not one of them. They're fabulous. They provide us with free eco services, but people just don't know. So I think spreading the word and getting people to realize that they can have these little areas at home where they just sit outside and watch the skinks and the butterflies and the bumblebees, and you can make a real difference. So my conservation story is, when I was younger, we were told there would be no bald eagles. And as an older person who grew up with no internet, I had the National Geographic, man. I waited when that came in the mail. And what can I do about that? Not much. However, there are certain bees that are rare, that aren't on the endangered species list, but they're rare. If I garden for them and I can just coax a few to come and stay at my place and have the resources I have for you, we can create our own little conservation area in my backyard. That's empowering, to emotional, good feelings. And I know that it works. And my example is, are you familiar with the St. Mark's Church on English Avenue?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it burned down and the shell is left. And several of us were down there creating a garden for them because they wanted to build community. Well, I check on it every once in a while. And I was down there a couple years ago. I saw an American bumblebee, Pennsylvanicus, which is not a common bumblebee, in Atlanta, in the heart of the asphalt jungle, in a small garden. I was ecstatic. I mean, I'm taking photos, I'm sending them to other entomologists, make sure my ID was right. It can be done. And how empowering and how fun for an individual or a family to be caught up in making such a positive difference that they can actually see in their lifetime. That's big stuff.
That's great. That's wonderful. Well, I believe that you're pollinating these ideas and you're really building, in the sense, these avenues for community to connect, and really giving a lot of food for thought and food for the mind to create this emotional attachment. So I want to thank you. I don't have any more questions. I'm just really, really in awe of the way that you've picked up the flag for the Pollinator Census and really broadcast it so well. And you have such a great program. We're going to put all the information of how to get to the Pollinator Census and what to do in the show notes. So we're going to have that. So everyone, thank you, Becky. Thanks for being on this. And we look forward to hearing more and catching up later.
Thank you. And I look forward to seeing your counts and your mother's counts in August.
Will do. Thank you so much. What's up, good plant people? This is Mario Cambardella and Devin, and we are going to walk through all your garden and landscape questions through Master Gardener AI. We're going to hear the questions, hear the responses, and then Devin and I are going to dig in and validate.
There we go.
So I'm looking forward to this, and here we go. We're going to hear the first question. Let's do it.
How do I plant rose bushes on a sunny hill? Sure, here's a brief guide. 1. Choose sun-loving rose varieties. 2. Prepare the soil by adding organic matter to improve fertility and drainage. 3. Dig holes twice the width and depth of the root ball. 4. Place the rosebush in the hole, ensuring the bud union is level with or slightly above the soil surface. 5. Backfill with soil, firming it gently around the roots. 6. Water thoroughly after planting. 7. Apply mulch around the base to conserve moisture and suppress weeds. 8. Regularly water, fertilize, and prune your roses, and monitor for pests and diseases. Happy gardening.
Now, I'm impressed.
That was pretty good.
Because the Master Gardener AI, not only does it like tell you all the information, but it breaks it down into steps. Like it knows that
I didn't hit
steps.
It hit every single step that you need to plant a rose. The only thing I would say different would be use a little bit of Epsom salt.
What does that do?
It's got some potassium in it, and roses love that. It helps them root out. So that's the only thing I would add to that response.
But what's the methodology on Epsom? Like, was it just a dash? Like I'm imagining.
Yeah, it's like a tablespoon.
Okay, tablespoon. So that's, what was that? Do you remember what steps it was? I guess we'll write it in the show notes.
Yeah.
All right, so Epsom salt. Now, I didn't hear anything. That went through PES, went through pH.
Dig your hole twice as wide, no deeper, slightly above. I mean, it hit everything just right. So that's amazing.
All right, next.
How do I create a rainbow look in my garden? Creating a rainbow garden involves planting flowers in the color sequence of a rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Start with red flowers like roses, followed by orange marigolds, yellow sunflowers, green ferns, blue delphiniums, indigo salvias, and violet lavenders. Make sure each plant type is suitable for your garden's conditions. You can also add a garden path or stepping stones to mimic a rainbow's arc. This will not only create a stunning visual effect, but also provide a guide for visitors to follow and appreciate your colorful garden.
I want to meet the person that prompted that question, because I've never heard of a rainbow garden.
I haven't either, but I mean, the colors were all dead on. I mean, I like the little bit of design element it added to it.
Yeah. I like I'd never seen one.
No, I haven't seen one either, but it sounds awesome.
But it sounds awesome. I have heard of fairy gardens. I have heard, obviously, pollinator gardens, bee gardens, all this stuff, rainbow gardens. That's the first.
Yeah.
All right. I want to see it. Send us a picture. Try a rainbow garden. All right. Next question.
Why aren't my hydrangeas blooming? Hydrangeas may not bloom for several reasons. Over-pruning can remove the buds set for the next season, especially if you have a variety that blooms on old wood. Winter or spring freezes can damage the buds. Lack of sufficient sunlight can also hinder blooming. Most hydrangeas need at least partial sun to bloom well. Lastly, too much nitrogen fertilizer can lead to lush foliage at the expense of blooms. To encourage blooming, prune correctly based on your hydrangea type. Protect from late freezes, ensure adequate sunlight, and balance your fertilizer use.
Perfect.
What?
Perfect. I mean, I get asked that question so many times, and that is verbatim what I tell people.
So we're going to tell people to go to Master Gardener.
Pretty much. That's all they have to do.
But, okay, so what did Master Gardener AI miss? Anything?
I don't think it did. It literally hit everything from pruning to freezes.
Okay, let's go deeper on the pruning, though, because between all the different types of hydrangeas, paniculatas and macrophyllias, so is there different pruning techniques for each one of these?
Yeah, so this is going to be the care for like the traditional mop-head hydrangeas.
Yeah.
So the ones that are either blue or pink. And those bloom on old wood. Some of the newer varieties will bloom on new wood as well, but usually on those, a good rule of thumb is do not prune them after the end of July because they set their buds for next year.
So we already missed it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we got a few more days.
We got a little bit longer. You got 10 days. So
you can go ahead and prune some old blooms.
You can cut them back if you want to like prune them back to get a little bit smaller because they've gotten a little too big and unruly. Prune them back now. You want to prune back to where 2 leaves come out of the stem, and then that's where it'll rebranch next year. The other thing, the late freeze, that always will get hydrangea buds.
Yeah.
We always get a late frost. So you want to make sure you cover it with frost block, not any plastic or sheets, because that will do more damage. You need something that breathes.
Mulch.
Yeah. Mulch is another good one.
Warm.
Yep.
Keep the roots warm.
Yep. And then the over-fertilization is always like a problem. If you give it too much nitrogen, it's going to focus on growing leaves and not bloom. So, I mean, it hit everything and that's for a mophead. Paniculatas are a little bit different. They're more forgiving because paniculatas, the ones with the big cone flowers, they bloom on new woods. So you usually prune those back in February. So
they're Master Gardener AI.
Got you a little bit.
So, all right, we're going to do a few more. Let's go to the next.
My pumpkin plants won't fruit. Why? Pumpkin plants may fail to fruit due to several reasons. One common issue is poor pollination. Pumpkins have separate male and female flowers, and bees or other insects must transfer pollen from male to female flowers for fruit to set. If pollinators are scarce, you may need to hand pollinate. Another issue could be inadequate sunlight or nutrients. Pumpkins require full sun and rich, well-drained soil. Overwatering or underwatering can also stress the plant and inhibit fruiting. Lastly, disease or pests could be affecting your plants. Regularly inspect your plants and treat any issues promptly to ensure healthy growth and fruiting.
Okay, I got a few that it missed.
Okay.
I'm very proud that
There you go.
I got a few. So on the issue of, well, just to mention, squash is kind of like this too.
Yeah.
So squash will have a male and a female bloom. And then also, it could have put a descriptor on how to distinguish between the two.
Yeah.
So the female is going to have a little wider sort of base.
Yep.
And then the male flower is going to be a little bit longer and skinnier. And then for self-pollinating, which I do this with my Meyer lemons.
Yep. That's how I do it. Yep. You tips or paintbrush. Paintbrush works great.
Paintbrush.
Yep.
Just
Like a little.
like a watercolor paintbrush.
Yep. Like a watercolor paintbrush.
I think those were the things that I felt like
Yeah. I mean,
Master Gardener could have told us.
Yeah.
AI overlord.
But yeah, I
But
think,
we'll teach it. Yeah. Anything else on the squash?
I mean, other than make sure you plant it like on a mound because they like to be grown on a mound. They don't like to grow flat.
Right. And then also what I've seen it done well is plant it where there's like a little bit of a retaining wall.
Yeah.
So that it can kind of hang. Likes to hang.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
What grows well outdoors in low-light areas in Georgia clay soil? In Georgia's clay soil and low-light conditions, several plants can thrive. Ferns like the Christmas fern or lady fern are excellent choices. Hostas also do well in shade and come in various sizes and leaf colors. For flowering plants, consider hydrangeas or azaleas, which are well suited to Georgia's soil and light conditions. For ground cover, pachysandra or vinca can work well. Remember, while these plants can tolerate low light, they still need some sunlight, so ensure they're not in complete darkness. Also, amending clay soil with organic matter can improve its structure and nutrient content.
So, in Atlanta, we're a city in the forest.
Yep.
Which means we live in the shade of that forest. I think these are some good examples.
They were good. I mean, they were all right. I mean, there's always more. I mean, the only thing I would add right now would be cast iron. That's another great one.
Aspiditra.
Yep.
Yeah, and we were just at a trade show. They're coming out with new varieties of aspiditra.
They're so cool. They're so cool. They've got little dwarf ones. They have variegated ones. It's awesome.
I feel like these plant breeders find a plant that haven't been mass produced yet.
For sure.
And then they just sink their teeth.
Speaking of awesome plants, Farfugia would be another great one that you could do in low light. That thing with those huge dramatic leaves are awesome.
And then the yellow candle bloom.
Yep. And in August.
Okay, so we went over some staples, gave you some new ones. I think that will round it out.
Yeah.
So
I'm pretty impressed. I can't believe. I mean, it knows what it's talking about.
If you have a question and burning desire, anything to do with your plant or landscape, anything in the garden, go to mastergardener.ai, put your question in. Your question could be picked from the many we put on the show and we broadcast to everyone. I'm Mario. This is Devin. This is Plant Nerd Podcast. See you next time.
Thanks.